I think as a female woman of color, especially Asian, it's so there's pre Me Too and then post Me Too. And it's definitely changed. It's definitely changed. So pre Me Too, you for me especially because I tend to come from more of an intelligent angle. I don't quote unquote I'm not girly in a sense, and I never sort of like I was never good at using feminine wiles. It's them, I think. And I it was definitely harder for me because I didn't how I looked and who I was didn't go together either. So in the industry,
This realm
people
is
were always confused by me because they would look at me, and especially when I first started, I was like Hollywood skinny, like very Hollywood skinny, but I had the boobs and the butt, like and people would not kind of treat me as a person oftentimes, and love to mansplain, love to sort of talk over you, and treat you sort of a bit like a
if you ever
handbag, an accessory, to take to parties or whatever, And it was just interesting because it's hard to get ahead when people don't see you, as a person, as so in that respect, especially in the on-camera world, and I was writing and directing back then too, and men would just
I
you
won't
would be
let you down.
talking about a problem on set and you would be like, this could be the solution, and they would all just be like, pretend like they didn't hear it and be like, something's wrong, we need to fix it, and you're like, the solution? And
Right
I had
here.
to learn to kind of be like, the solution, and then they would be like, maybe that could be a solution, and so it was rampant, I would say, more in the entertainment industry for women to be women, like be a woman, and then men to be men, fixing the problem and all that stuff. But post Me Too, I would say it's less that, and more people, whether it's gender identity, I think people are starting to understand that people are people. Women are people as well. We have emotions. We're not just something pretty to look at. We can be involved in choices. We have our own agency. So, not to get all political in that sense, but it can be twofold. Being an Asian woman who's considered, on the good looking side, can help you up to a point, and then stop you too, because people don't want to take you seriously, or they don't want to give you opportunities
She will be
because
upset if she
life should be
catches us
harder for
lazing
you.
around like
I've been
this.
told that often too. I'm like, what? Then that makes no, my life is everybody's life is difficult at times. Like, why am I being singled out? And they're like, your life's too easy. And you're like, what makes you think that? And they're like, because you're pretty and you need to be put in your
Hmm.
place. And you're like, how, how does that make sense? So I know that sounds really strange to say. I remember the first time that was said to me, actually. It's been said to me multiple times, actually, which is why it's not just like it was that one person. But I remember a high school teacher saying that to two women, actually, saying that to my face, where they were like, I need to teach you a lesson because life is hard. And I was like, but I didn't do anything wrong. And they're like, it doesn't matter. You should learn now that life is hard. And
Oh my.
it's like, at the time, I wasn't talking about obviously like my traumatic childhood. So I was like, but my life is hard. Like, so it was just an interesting thing. And it continued into, going into,
Hmm.
and when people don't like, the worst is when people are like, you go in for an opportunity and then you get casting couched. That's the worst. And that has happened. And I think it's happened to a lot of us women more so. And it's hard to take yourself seriously when people are just treating you that way. So post Me Too, I would say we are now seen for our work. We are seen for, and it's become a different
I
world in
feel
that
like
sense.
running.
And I don't want to say easier, but those sort of things that got in the way before, it could help you and hurt you at the same time. Like, you know, I like to say beauty is, and being Asian, like an exotic Asian that people fetishize, can be something that can help you, but it
Hmm.
can also hurt you. So it's a double-edged sword, I guess. Um, and opportunities are more now, I would say, for me. Whereas before, I had some of my white presenting female friends who were auditioning for the same roles I was. And it was difficult when they would be like, oh, yeah, I got that role. And I was like, I knew that I was in the mix for a lot of those, but I didn't have the resume they did. And they're at the time they would be like, we're going to pick somebody who's more well qualified. And I'm like, how do I become more well qualified when I don't get the opportunity? Right. And so it was a conundrum in a sense. And, there were 5 or 6 major roles, I would say, that I was passed on because they were like, does she have more things that we can look at? What's her resume? Why hasn't she worked more? And it's like, I can't unless you hire me, and then they would, like I said, hire the person with the bigger resume. And it was strange. I remember it would be like Japanese accent, Korean accent. It wasn't something that wasn't accented. And I would be like, oh, I went in for that too. And so I'm glad that now, especially in voiceover 2, we have people who are more like, let's look for somebody of this descent or somebody of, you don't have to be so gatekeeping that you're like, you must be this and this and this in order to, I'm on the fence about that. I know a lot of people who are like, if you're not Chinese, if you're not da-da-da, like you shouldn't. That's getting really into the weeds, I think. I always look at the story. I always look at the sides. I always look at the history. And if it's specific and I need to know the language, I need to know like backstory because of this. And I'm like, I wouldn't know that. Like, then I will pass on an audition. If it's not, and it's just general, they just want an Asian character, sure, I will audition, even if it's something outside of my quote unquote ethnicity. But now at least all of us, let's say Asian female presenting, will be seen, and we won't be competing with people who have been in the industry for a long time, who have had more opportunities. So in that sense, it's changed. I don't know if that answered your question or not.
It absolutely does. And I'm in full agreement with you there as well. I think I'm closer to your philosophy and interpretation of proper representation.
Yeah.
For me, it's all about the lived-in experiences. Characters from Hong Kong, and they've experienced the discrimination between mainland China and Hong Kong.
Yes.
I have no part in that. And I don't have
Yeah.
the right to audition for that. Not at all, I think.
Yeah. And that's important. I think these things, the developers need to. The problem is oftentimes they may not know like what they want yet when they're auditioning. It's a hard process, right? Video games take years to make, as we know. Mm-hmm. So that can be difficult. If there is already like source material, then we all need to educate ourselves, and we can't all be greedy.